Let's talk about Australia's construction industry. Hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Heiser Says. I'd like to talk about the recent evacuation that happened in a high-rise tower down in Sydney and about our construction industry in general. Now, if you're not familiar with the fact, I'm an architect. You know, my full-time job isn't making YouTube videos, but I actually am an architect. My wife and I have had a business for 7 years now, our own practice, and we've worked around a range of different buildings. And we've seen it all. We have seen it all. So I thought I'd read this article from the SBS News about the evacuation in Sydney. So, 51 units have been declared unsafe in a high-rise in Sydney Olympic Park after an internal wall failed. 51 units. My understanding is it happened on Christmas Eve, so it's just insane. Safety fears at the newly built Opal Tower in Sydney Olympic Park have prompted a builders group to air their concerns that regulation and compliance are not strong enough in Australia's building industry. Now, I find this interesting that it's a builders group because my criticisms are going to be firmly aimed at the way buildings are procured and how the bodies that are the traditional people that ensure safety and quality in constructions have been completely compromised by the way buildings are procured these days. So the Builders Collective of Australia. See, I'm reading Atlas Shrugged right now, and I'm just reading about the group of socialist railroad owners coming together in a collective to squash the competition. So I'm very dubious about this title. So the Builders Collective of Australia told SBS News it was worried regulation and compliance are not strong enough in the nation's building industry after concerns were raised over high-rise apartments when residents say they saw and heard cracking in a 38-story complex. Okay, let's just pull apart this little quote here. They're saying they're worried, they're concerned that regulation and compliance are not strong enough. So they're implying that we need to have more regulation, more government intervention. I think we need to do two things to ensure that issues like this are not apparent anymore. Because right now, there's a big problem in the construction industry because as an architect, as a professional, I am licensed under the Architects Act in my state. I have certain professional responsibilities and obligations. Building certifiers as well have certain responsibilities and obligations. They sign off and approve and check the work done by other professionals to give you a stamp so you can occupy your building. But here's the issue. Often, a developer or conglomerate or organization will go to a builder or a design and construct team. So you have the builder at the top managing it, and then you have all the other professionals underneath. Now, by working for this builder, who you may work repeatedly over and over again on different projects, you are compromising your ability to act as a professional, to act impartial, because you may not get the next job. You may not get the next paycheck. I'm not just talking about architects. I'm not just talking about building certifiers. It's also engineers. It's everyone in the game. It's to do with the way that it's procured right now. The traditional people who would step back and professionally be able to intervene and say, no, that's not approved. No, sorry, I'm withholding your funds because of that, are now working under the builder. And the builder's everyone's friend. And I'm sure there's certainly some really good builders out there, but there are a lot of dodgy ones too. And there are a lot of people cutting corners. And I think that rather than having more regulation and non-compliance, you shouldn't allow situations where the professions who have a professional duty of care and a body regulating them are underneath the team that's constructing the project. So that's my biggest gripe with all of this. I don't think it'll solve all the problems, but it is traditionally how a lot of these things were identified. Now, these occupants are lucky because it will be within their, hopefully, defects liability period, but it's going to be a legal pain. And, you know, what are the people going to do in their apartments? So residents of 51 units at the Sydney Olympic Park remain barred from returning to their home while engineering assessments are carried out. Authorities originally feared the 38-story building was at risk of collapse. The Builders Collective of Australia National President Philip Dewar said the exact nature of the problem was still being worked out. I'm sure We haven't got anything specific at this stage. There's a lot of scuttlebutt at the moment, and we are not quite sure of what the exact problem is. But most definitely there are footing issues and so on. Okay, so this is a big deal, because I mean, builders, developers, project managers, everyone in the industry, the tougher it gets, people need to save money, fees get squeezed down, they cut corners, they do things faster. It just happens. The number of times we've lost jobs because I put a fee in and, you know, which I thought I was doing a bargain fee and I was double the competitor. Just think about that. How can you provide the same service? I know it's a free market, but damn. The actual regulation and compliance of the industry is nowhere near strong enough. And that is the core issue of why we exist and why we are concerned. Why we exist. Why we exist. You know what? I will just look up this mob because I have never heard of them before. The Builders Collective of Australia. And, you know, I'm an architect. I've been involved with a lot of things. I've been on the Institute of Architects, a better building industry. Here we go. Here they appear. Let's go to the About Us section. So, the Builders... About the Builders Collective Australia. We were born out of the dire need for representation of small builders in the nation, where we were excluded by the major players after the criminal collapse of the HIA, when the masterminded by the Last Resort Home Warrant Insurance Scheme. The Australian Consumer Association has summed up this controversial warrant scheme and issued it makes a mockery of consumer protection on the ABC report in 2007, referring to these policies as junk insurance. So this is before my time involved in the industry, or maybe just when I was starting. From a builder's perspective, he or she must provide the family home to the insurer to fully underwrite any consumer... Ah, yes, I remember this now. Any future consumer claims, as the criteria demands he must obtain what is termed insurance eligibility on an annual basis prior to being registered and being able to obtain a building permit. Okay, this is to do with last decade. There's a big issue with insurance with regards to builders, and particularly if you're a small builder, you have a lot of risk that you have to take on. It is insane the amount of risk builders actually have to take on. So I'd be interested in learning a bit more about this group, but if that's what they came from, I can appreciate why they're getting together and why they're getting frustrated at some of the bigger organizations are really, stacking it against them. So I wonder if the developer of the Opal Tower, if they'll actually cop it, or if it'll be the builder. Because what will happen is the developer will get sued, then the builder will get sued, and the engineer, everyone will get sued. It'll be a nightmare. So the actual regulation, is nowhere strong enough. Exactly. It's too early to say what the issues are with the Sydney high-rise, but most certainly we're not terribly surprised that something like this could happen. Well, no, most people who are involved in the industry are not surprised at all. Mr. Dora said, she'll be right, culture, of regulation in the building industry was a major concern. I mean, here's a question for all the libertarians out there. How is the market going to respond to these type of issues? Because the developer will just shut down this company, he'll start up another one and keep going on his merry way. The builder might get burned, the engineer might get burnt, but they could just flip it and go on their way. How's the market going to respond? How are the consumers going to respond to this? So the biggest issue is that the consumers, or the complexity of our buildings, are such that the average consumer doesn't appreciate what actually is involved in them and how complex a tower like this is and all the issues that can arise. The real estate agents will tell you anything under the sun to sell it to you. And I know of showrooms that had all these high-end luxury Italian appliances that were, or fixtures and fittings that were fraudulently copied in China, and you got a dodgy knockoff inside your apartment. There are buildings that have been compromised, and there are any amount of builders and maybe even sub-trades and so on that really don't have the expertise to be doing what they're doing within our industry. Well, yeah, that is true. That's a big part of our industry, is to just identify these non-tradies that are acting in these roles. particularly with fire separation too. That's a big issue where you've got all these people living in these apartments together and fire separation between the different compartments. New South Wales Treasurer Dominic Perrotto commended emergency services handling of the Olympic Park high-rise evacuation. The relevant authorities have ensured that all residents are safe. I understand that a number of residents have returned to the buildings and that it is the biggest concern for the government and will work through all of these issues. The planning department has stated that they will conduct an investigation into the issues surrounding the building. New South Wales Planning and Housing Minister Anthony Roberts confirmed an investigation was underway. I've ordered my department to comprehensively investigate and report to me all steps taken to ensure this building's structural integrity, Mr. Roberts said. Yeah, you know, your apartment probably just stamped a letter from someone and never checked a thing. However, Australian developer Ecove, which spent $165 million on the tower, according to the ABC, defended the high-rise builder's icon. Well, not if you got 51 people not going into your apartment and cracking in the structure. Not at all. That's atrocious. We're waiting on further information from the engineers, but we understand this issue is with a concrete panel. Importantly, that's bad. Importantly, the authorities have determined it's safe for people to re-enter and have isolated the issue to a small number of apartments. 51 isn't a small number of apartments. It's a high-quality building. No, it's not. It's falling apart. Ecove has delivered a project that is well above the industry standard. What does that tell you about the industry standard? Until now, it's a project that's gained attention because of its quality. Well, it's going to get attention now, isn't it, because of its quality. Fire and Rescue New South Wales Superintendent Adam Dewberry said he didn't expect the other 51 units to be declared safe anytime soon. Okay. It's not as if it's going to be tomorrow or the next day because there needs to be an element of work done. Now it's just how quickly the work can be done by the engineers to get in and get a really good thorough assessment. Over Christmas. This is over the Christmas period. He said authorities weren't aware of how many people were affected. The actual number we're not sure of because at this time of year, the evacuation people, yada, 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 people are all Christmas and getting themselves sorted out. So they were allowed to get their belongings on Tuesday. So I thought I would share with you a story from my own experiences as an architect. Okay? Here we go. Good. So, as you can see here, I'm in my Rivet project. Now, this was done several years ago, just when our practice was probably 2 years old. I got my coffee here. Now, we'd just done a whole series of projects with a big builder, about $40 million worth, and we'd gotten a little job to put an extension onto a hospital in remote Queensland. You know, just here, a little job. We'd designed it up. I'd come in, you know, very competitive because I wanted to get more health sector work. And, you know, we documented it up. It was going smoothly. The doctor was a bit of a character, like they all are. But here is just an interesting thing I want to point out. This is where I had a point of contention with them. This was a corridor connecting the new extension to the existing hospital. And you notice how we've got, you know, nice simple roof here. We've got a nice simple roof here, but then we've got this type of thing here where this roof is joining up into the gutter here. Okay, now what's wrong with that, Florian, you say? Why would you have an issue about that? And this here is taken from the Brands Guide. It's from the New Zealand Research of Construction Council or Group. Their version of CSIRO, I understand. Now, this shows you here just some different ways of waterproofing some eave gutters. So, you know, you've got, here's a PVC membrane, you've got a, you know, a substrate, and you've got a flashing underneath it. So the idea is you've got rain falling, comes down. You will have some slight, action where the water comes up. And not microbial. I'll remember it after I finish this. But here as well, you've got a drip edge. It's about having your layers of waterproofing on top of each other. Now the problem with that model that I showed you is that my client wanted to pretty much butt their roof like this and flash into it. Okay, they didn't want to do anything to the existing roof. They just wanted to flash into it. So you're going to have water coming up and going here into the existing building. going up and over and down in, up and over and down in, when this gutter filled up with 1 in 100 rains. So I had an issue with that. I wasn't happy with that. I said, no, guys, come on, we can't really do that. I think we need to propose an alternative. So this is what I wanted them to do. I wanted them to build an actual roof that either went over and hooked into the higher level with the gutter underneath, or tied into the gutter. Wait, let me change it. There we go. That one. Oh, that was the one. So the idea would be that this roof would tie into this one here, so the rain would fall onto these gutters and capture here, and this one fall and capture into that gutter as well. So what do you think happened? What do you think happened when we proposed it to them? There was additional cost. It was an additional cost. So they didn't want to pursue with that one. So they ended up going with, you know, their own dodgy version. Now, the problem is, here's the problem that I face as an architect, okay? Because this is what I was proposing, but the problem is, as an architect, I was responsible for what they wanted to do. Okay, so I'd take that liability on. So what I did is I just put another option on the drawing saying pick to try and mitigate that. But I never received work from them again, ever again, because I didn't want to do it their way. I wanted to just build the roof into the other roof, demolish a portion of it, and do it properly. Because this is a corridor between a hospital and another area. What if you've got heavy rain and water leaking in, people slipping and injuring themselves? What if you have mold growing inside the cavities of the wall or in the ceiling space because water is trickling in through capillary action? I told you I'd remember. Because it just isn't designed. And that's, sadly, that's the issue that, well, one example I encountered early in running a practice, where if you're working in this new type of relationship that's very common now, under the builder, your ability to act as an impartial professional and to put the need, you know, the end product before their profit margins, or before squeezing a little bit extra out of it, was compromised. And you're saying, Florian, wouldn't the client notice? Wouldn't they notice? No, they didn't care. They didn't care. They didn't understand, because it wasn't their field of expertise. They were just happy to accept what the builder proposed. So guys, I thought I would share that story with you just to show an example from my own past where I've encountered these type of issues on, you know, a reasonable job for us. That was a, you know, remote job. It was a tight deadline. We enjoyed it, but you know, it cost us a substantial amount of future work with that client because I didn't want to compromise. So yeah, that's the issues with our building game in just one example from one of your YouTube friends. So guys, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.